Okay, let's dive into this. We've all heard the story, right? A world-ending flood, a chosen survivor, and a massive ark. But long before Noah ever set sail, and honestly, even before the Epic of Gilgamesh was fully put together, there was another story. Welcome to this explainer on the Atra-Hasis epic. Today, we're looking at a 4,000-year-old clay tablet that serves as the absolute, undeniable blueprint for the world's most famous flood myths. And you know, this isn't just a story about a lot of rain, it's this incredibly fascinating look at how ancient people processed labor, overpopulation, and basic survival. So, where did the story of the Great Flood actually begin? Well, if we strip away all the modern interpretations and retellings, we find ourselves right in the middle of ancient Mesopotamia. Meet Atra-Hasis. That's the name of the epic, and it's also the name of our main character. His name literally translates to exceedingly wise, and as you'll see in a minute, he absolutely earns that title. The oldest known copy of this Akkadian epic dates back to around 1650 BC. To put that into perspective, that's right during the reign of Hammurabi's great-grandson. But its roots go even further back into Sumerian history. And what's truly captivating here is how it all starts. It doesn't begin with human sin or corruption. It begins with a cosmic dispute. Our story kicks off with, get this, a massive divine labor strike. The Mesopotamian pantheon was basically divided in two. You had the upper gods, the Anunnaki, who essentially acted as upper management. Then you had the Igigi, the lower gods, who were forced to do all the grueling, backbreaking work of digging riverbeds and irrigation canals. After 40 years of this intense labor, the lesser gods just had enough. They literally burned their tools, surrounded the supreme god Enlil's dwelling in the dead of night, and flat out refused to work. So Enlil desperately needed a solution. And this brilliantly illustrates how the gods teamed up to build a replacement workforce to break that cosmic strike. It's a bizarre, step-by-step recipe. Step 1, they cleanse themselves. Step 2, they sacrifice a lesser god who possessed intelligence. Step 3, they mix his blood with the clay of the earth and a little touch of cosmic water. And step 4, add drums. They bring this mixture to life to the rhythmic beating of drums. They hand this brand new creation a carrying basket, and just like that, humans are invented to take over the heavy lifting. So humans turn out to be excellent workers. But there was a major catch. Exactly 1,200 years pass. Humans are doing all the hard labor, and during that time, they multiply. They multiply so much and become so incredibly loud that they sound like roaring herds of cattle. The noise becomes absolutely deafening. In fact, it gets so loud that up in the heavens, the supreme god Enlil literally cannot sleep. And as you can probably imagine, an exhausted, sleep-deprived supreme deity is not exactly a forgiving one. To solve this escalating overpopulation crisis, Enlil unleashes a series of plagues. First up is frost fever. But our exceedingly wise human, Atra-Hasis, gets some secret advice from the trickster god Enki. Enki tells him, hey, stop worshipping all the gods except the god of disease. Flattered by these exclusive bribes and sacrifices, the disease god stops the plague. Well, another 1,200 years pass, and Enlil tries storms, and then famine. But each time, Atra-Hasis bribes the specific plague bringer with offerings, and the plagues just stop. Enlil is absolutely furious. At this point, Enlil has finally had enough. He decides to wipe out humanity entirely with a global deluge. To make sure his plan works, he makes Enki swear a strict oath before all the gods that he will not speak a single word to any human about this. But Enki finds this hilarious loophole. He goes to the reed hut of his faithful priest Atra-Hasis. Making sure not to speak to the man directly, Enki whispers to the wall of the hut itself. He says, separate yourself from your house, build a ship, spurn your possessions, save your life. He relays the whole entire plan without technically breaking his contract. So now Atrahasis has this frantic 7-day hourglass to build the ark. And the specs Enki provided are highly specific. A massive, waterproof, cube-shaped ship, sealed tight with pitch, and a roof mimicking the cosmic freshwater ocean, the Abzu. Atrahasis packs it with food, wild birds, and ironically enough, even fish. But to get it built in time, Atrahasis pulls off an incredibly cunning trick. He throws a lavish feast to attract his neighbors to help him build the ship, the very ship they would soon drown outside of. The text actually notes he was so nauseous with fear during this party that he couldn't bring himself to eat a single bite. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the incredible irony of it all. The storm hits and the floodgates open. Down on Earth, humanity is swirling in this raging chaos. But look up at heaven.
Enlil thought he was solving all his problems, but without humans around to harvest food and offer sacrifices, the mighty upper gods are starving. They're suffering from cramps and thirst. The mother goddess is even weeping, accusing Enlil of total foolishness for destroying their workforce instead of just managing the original rebellion.
Eventually, the storm finally breaks. The ark runs aground on a mountain. Atrahasis steps out and immediately offers a roasted food sacrifice. The imagery the ancient scribe uses here is both hilarious and deeply, deeply human. The supposedly supreme deities have been starving for so long that the exact moment they smell the roasting meat, they swarm the altar like flies. They are so unbelievably relieved to have a human back to feed them that they gleefully accept the offering and they grant Atrahasis and his wife immortality.
So the crucial point is that this epic concludes with a bitter compromise. This explains why this story mattered so much to the ancients. To ensure the overpopulation crisis never happens again, the gods established new rules for humanity. Natural infertility for some, infant mortality, and a strict lifespan capped at 120 years maximum. This wasn't just a story, it was an ancient divine treaty. It was early humanity's way of rationalizing the very real suffering, disease, and death they saw in their everyday world. Let's move to and see how this builds, because the Atra-Hasis epic didn't just disappear into the sands of time. It became the literal foundation of human storytelling. We see its DNA in the earlier Sumerian king lists, and an intermediate version was copied almost directly into the Epic of Gilgamesh. Though, funny enough, later Babylonian scribes edited out the embarrassing parts about the gods starving. Eventually, this incredibly rich Mesopotamian tradition heavily influenced the biblical narrative of Genesis and Noah. The literary lineage is just undeniably clear.
But what actually inspired the original myth? Well, researchers point to real, documented scientific events. At the end of the last ice age, around 10,000 BC, global temperatures warmed rapidly. The coastlines of the Persian Gulf were pushed inland by a staggering 1,000 kilometers. This sudden, devastating sea level rise etched a collective trauma into the region's memory. Combine that with the Neolithic Revolution, which was this incredibly stressful shift from small, egalitarian hunter-gatherer tribes into crowded, hierarchical city-states where agricultural labor was just brutal, and you have the perfect recipe for this myth.
The Atra-Hasis epic shows us that our ancestors weren't just spinning wild fantasies, they were actively trying to understand their rapidly changing, chaotic world through the lens of divine forces. They used stories to process environmental catastrophe and societal growing pains. So as we face our own era of dramatic climate shifts, rapidly changing labor landscapes, and massive technological revolutions, I want to leave you with this. If our oldest myth is just an ancient way of processing these very human struggles, what modern events will become the myths of tomorrow?